Hi students, and welcome to today's live IELTS class. My name is Adrian and I'm streaming to you from beautiful Budapest here in Central Europe. I hope everybody is having a fantastic week. In this class, we are looking at a task 1 writing for the academic IELTS, specifically focusing on a line graph and emphasizing the importance of analysis and interpretation in your response. Hi Amira, hi Firdavs, hi Yekstan. Good to see our members in class on time. While we wait for a few more of our members to join, again, these lessons, materials, the strategies come from our websites at aehelp.com for academic IELTS. Be sure to check us out there. And for the general version of the exam, check us out at gieltshelp.com. That's generalieltshelp.com. On both of those sites, we have loads of materials, strategies, software to help you improve and practice every single day. Hi, Kesey. Nice to see you in class as well. Students, our websites, just real quickly, they look like this. This is our academic IELTS portal. Click that big red button to join the premium package. Get over 100 hours of video lessons, original practice exams in computer-based and paper-based format, as well as an interactive course. And the same idea for the general version of the exam. Click that big red button to join us there. Hi, Carissa. Good to see many more members coming into the class. Again, for those of you who haven't done it yet, be sure to download our apps, Academic IELTS Help and General IELTS Help for your smartphones. Integrate, link the apps to the web accounts. And if you have questions or need help, just send me an email, Adrian, A-D-R-I-A-N, at aehelp.com. So today we are focusing on the writing section in this class, task 1, and then in the next class we will start a task 2, and you'll notice that the topics will be kind of related, which is not necessarily the case in the official IELTS, but we're doing this for practice purposes. And then tomorrow we'll have some speaking and writing, and then on Saturday some Q&A and more speaking. Now, let's take a look at this task 1 question. We'll work through it together. Again, for the academic task 1, you will be presented with either a line graph, bar graph, pie chart, flow chart, table, map, diagram. So lots of different possibilities. Make sure to practice them all, okay? And sometimes you'll have combinations like line graph with pie charts or bar charts with a table. So you have to make sure to practice lots and lots of different versions. If you're a general IELTS student, it's going to be a little bit easier for you. Your task 1 will be letter writing, and of course you can find out examples and information for that at gieltshelp.com. All right, students, so let's take a look at this. Let's read the question carefully first. Hi, Awaz. Hi, Roshni. Nice to see a couple more members jumping in just in time to catch the question. So this is IELTS Task 1 Writing. You should spend about 20 minutes on this task. Make sure to time yourself always. You should keep a record, students, of how much time these essays take you. Okay, so write it on your paper. If it takes you 15 minutes, write down 15 minutes. If it takes you 25, write down 25 so that you can look back when you're reviewing and see your progress. Okay, here we go. The following chart shows the consumption of renewable energy for a given period and its major sources. Report the main features and make comparisons where relevant. Okay, so far so good. If it's not 100% clear when you read the question, don't worry. Just take a look at the line graph or the graph that will give a lot more clarity. Okay, So write at least 150 words. At least, students, means minimum, okay? Many students think that if you go over, like you write 200 words, then that's bad. No, 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 that's good, okay? Band 7 to Band 9 essays are usually 200 to 220 words, or even maybe a bit more, okay? High-level students can write quite quickly and fluently, so in 20 minutes, they don't really have a problem, especially when they're doing an expository essay, to reach 200 words, okay? So 150 is minimum. They do count the words, all right? So they'll count a few lines, and then they'll draw an average, all right? So you definitely want to be over 150 words, okay? It's important to get task completion. Okay, so here we go. Here is the line graph for today. Maybe shrink this just a touch so you can see the full graph. Okay, so here we go. Renewable energy, total consumption, and major sources from 1949 to 2008. So roughly 6 decades, right? That's almost 60 years, 59 years, so roughly 6 decades. And on the y-axis, this is the y-axis as we discussed last week, you have the quadrillion BTU measure, okay? And you have 0, 2, 4, 6, 8, so it's intervals of 2 quadrillion BTUs, all right? And then on the x-axis, you have the years, and the years given are 1950 all the way to 2008, or just before 1950, all the way to 2008. And then here you have some interesting looking lines with some different colors. Now, paper-based exam, you'll have different patterns of lines, dotted lines, dashed lines, and so on. In the computer-based exam, you may see color as well. Okay, so we have this little green dotted line here. It's wind power. Okay, so it's wind energy. And then we have a kind of a blue one here. It's biofuels. Okay, biofuels. And then we have wood. And then we have hydroelectric power. Does anybody know what hydroelectric power means? What is, let's make sure you're all paying attention and I'm not just rambling and losing you. Hydroelectric power, what does that mean? Where is the energy coming from, members, when you see the word hydroelectric power? Just want to make sure that you're with me. I want to interact with you. I don't want to just lecture you. So, yeah, very good for Dobbs, Joanne. Yeah, it means power that's generated from using water. Yeah, exactly. The word hydro, okay, coming from hydrogen, hydro, means water, okay? I believe it's Latin origin, hydro. Yeah, so maybe using a dam, Roshni, that's possible. Absolutely, okay? And then this big red line here that we see, this is the total. Okay, so this is the total amount of energy consumption using renewable sources. Okay, renewable meaning that it can be used again and again, right? So wind, of course, wind is a constant on Earth, so we can continue to use it. Biofuels, meaning fuels coming from organic materials, that can be used again and again, and wood, and then hydropower. All right, so that's what the line graph looks like. Now we can take our first step. What do I need to do? So I read the question, I looked at the line graph, I looked at the key elements, the axes, I looked at the variables, I looked at the title, of course, that's very important. And now that I've observed all of this, I start my essay. And Awaz Akhmedov says, well, paraphrase the question, give some details using the line graph. And you're absolutely right, Awaz. That's what I want to do. So I want to take a look again at the question, begin my first paragraph of the overview. Okay. And for simplicity's sake, let's start up here. So the overview, a review for some, new for others. The overview is the first paragraph. It's the introduction as well. Okay, it has two elements. Element number one, paraphrase the question with details. Details, very important to get a better band score. Okay, it's your first element. And the second element is describe the most observable feature. Okay, great. So let's do that. So go ahead, members, using this question here. And I like how Amira, Kisi, Roshni, y'all said paraphrase as well. Yextun, remember with details. Okay, so let's do that now. Go ahead, members, paraphrase this question, and then using the graph, give me some more details. Okay, I'm going to do the same. So okay, so here's the graph again. Help you think through your answer. Okay, again, the types of energy that are described in more detail are wind, biofuel, wood, and hydroelectric power. Okay. Okay, so I can see that Yextan is already off to a good start here. Yextan says the line graph depicts the usage of renewable energy, hydro, bio, wind, and wood for a 60-year time period, and the significant sources. Yextan, you don't need to say significant sources because you're describing those significant sources, the hydro, bio, wind. Yextan, remember that the comma, so your commas, they come after the last letter in a word, and then it's a space, okay? So it's not space, comma. Punctuation does matter, Yextan. If you make that mistake over and over, you will lose a half band score, and it's easy to save that half band score. So make sure you're careful about that, Yextan, okay? All right. Roshni says the line graph presents statistics about the amount of energy generated by utilizing hydroelectric power, wood, wind, and biofuel from 1949 to 2008. Roshni, units are measured in quadrillion BTU. Nice, Roshni. Okay, it's good. I like how you included that piece at the end, the measurement as well. Okay. Amira says this line graph illustrates the used amount of sustainable energy generated from four main resources namely. So there, Amira, just say namely, not named, semicolon, but namely, comma, wind, biofuel, hydropower, and wood from 1949 to 2008. Okay, good. Ferdov says the given graph depicts the consumed energy from 1949 to 2008 for four renewable sources: biofuel, wood, hydro, and wind power, as well as the overall total. Okay, Ferdovs, don't forget the overall total, that big red line. Kisi, the given line graph represents the usage of four renewable energy sources: hydro, bio, wind, and wood in the period of 6 decades from 1949 to 2008, and the total usage of sustainable energy. The y-axis shows quadrillion BTU with intervals of 2, and the x-axis depicts the time. Okay, good, Kisi. Awaz, the given chart depicts the usage of renewable energy, including wind, biofuel, wood, and hydroelectric in the 60-year period from 1949 to 2008. All right, so far so good, students. This is what I have here as my first couple of sentences for describing, paraphrasing the question and adding detail. This line graph depicts the usage of sustainable and renewable. They're very close synonyms in this case. So this line graph depicts the usage of sustainable energy for a 60-year period from 1949 to 2008 as the total amount and some of its major parts: wind, biofuel, wood, and hydroelectric power. Okay, power can modify wind power, biofuel power, wood power. The y-axis shows these amounts from 0 to 8 quadrillion BTU with intervals of 2 quadrillion BTU. Notice how I described the y-axis, not the x-axis. The x-axis is intuitive, so to the average reader, it makes sense that the x-axis will contain the years, as in most cases. However, with the y-axis, it is kind of interesting to emphasize that we have a unique measure here, quadrillion BTUs. Okay. All right. So far so good. And members, you're doing a great job. Make sure you pay attention to those corrections that I did there in real time with your opening statements, okay? Remember, first impressions, students, are very important. So your first sentence in task 1 for your writing score is very important. It needs to be mistake-free, it needs to be accurate, and it needs to be descriptive, so not just a paraphrase, okay? Task 2, same thing. In task 2 writing, your hook has to be clean, clear, accurate, right? In speaking, when you give your passport, introduce yourself, you have to use nice, clear, fluent, accurate English. The first impression in writing and in speaking is definitely important for your mark, so pay close attention to that, okay? All right, so the next sentence and the final sentence in the overview is the main feature. So what's most observable? What's most observable? So what can we state? What is the most observable feature when looking at the consumption of these renewable energy sources and data without even really paying too much attention? So we don't need to focus on the little parts like the total or these numbers here. We just need to look at the lines to recognize the main feature. What would you say is the main feature? So you're in the exam, you're looking at this, and you remember, oh yeah, Adrian said, don't worry about numbers, just look at the picture here. What's most observable? What's happening? Okay, what can we understand about the use of renewable energy in these 60 years right away by looking at these 5 lines? So you have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 lines. What do you realize right away? Roshni, it's detail. So Roshni says the total amount of biofuel and wind follow an upward trend. That's detail. You're talking about just 2 little tiny lines down there, and it's only in the modern or more recent decades. So there's a much more observable. Yeah, so Ferdov's very good. So Ferdov's says, well, right away we can see that here there's definitely an overall upward trend in the 60 years for the total. Okay, that's a good point for Dobbs. Let's see if we can take our analysis one step further and say something interesting about this in combination with these other 4 lines. Okay. Yeah, so Joya, you're right. You're on the same page as for Dobbs. So there's clearly a considerable increase in the overall consumption of renewable energy. Yeah, Kesey, there you go. So Kesey's saying that there's fluctuations and changes in various sources of renewable energy, but the overall trend is an upward increase. So that's what we notice right away, right? So don't just look at one, do look at the full. You always want to observe the whole graph, especially with line graphs, bar charts, pie charts. So we notice that, okay, biofuels, it's an upward trend. Wind, it's kind of an upward trend. With wood, we have some variance here for sure. And then with hydroelectric, it's the same. We have a variance. But regardless of changes in the source of renewable energy, there's a clear upward trend in the total consumption. So you're comparing, for the most observable feature, you're comparing these 4 elements with this element here. That would be your band 9 level analysis and reporting for this task, okay? So go ahead and write that sentence for me, remember? So write the sentence which explains to your reader that you have variance here, but the total is an increase. Okay? So Amira says, immediately it can be seen that there was an erratic pattern of consumption for most sources. Okay, that's a good start, Amira. Now you want to finish that sentence. And I'm going to do this as well while you figure out your composition. Okay. Members, while I'm explaining these points in writing, think, write, of course, focused on the essay. Also, don't be shy to repeat the language that I use, especially in these Task 1 classes. I'm using a lot of technical English that you will hear from your professors and classmates in colleges and universities. So make sure to repeat what I say. As you may have guessed, I did a number of classes, even very advanced classes in statistics in university. So these types of essays are very close to home for me. Okay, so All right. So there is my Band 9 main feature explanation, of course, as is required in the expository essay. Ferdovs, nice. So Ferdov says, at first I shot. Ferdovs, I remember I wrote I shot as 2 words as well last week. But just a quick correction there, Ferdovs. I shot is actually 1 word, as I found out after the class. So I shot, 1 word, okay? It means the same as glance. So at first eye shot, it is clear that there is a significant variance in the usage of different renewable energy sources, but the overall consumption of sustainable power is on the rise throughout the 6 decades. Okay, so that's my sentence there. All right, so good on you, Ferdovs, to remember that word eye shot. Yeah, it's kind of it's a very visual use of the English language, right? I shot, so it's kind of nice. All right, Kesey says, at first glance, these 4 sustainable energy sources varied, but the total consumption power increased throughout the 60 years. Kesey, very nice writing. I would write it as throughout the 60 years or throughout these 60 years, okay? Otherwise, really nice, Kesey. It's a very concise, clean, clear description of what's happening. So good job with that. Okay, thumbs up, Kesey. That's great. Okay, so this is my overview, my introductory paragraph so far. Now, some of you might be thinking, well, that looks a little bit long, Adrian. But again, remember, viewers, members, I'm writing a Band 9 here, okay? So this is your absolute maximum level that you're going for in the exam, okay? And some students, if you're planning to become an ESL teacher, you need to get a Band 8.5 on the IELTS, then this is what you're expected to do. So this line graph depicts the usage of sustainable energy for a 60-year period from 1949 to 2008 as the total amount and some of its major parts: wind, biofuel, wood, and hydroelectric power. The y-axis shows these amounts from 0 to 8 quadrillion BTU, with intervals of 2 quadrillion BTU. At first eye shot, it is clear that there is significant variance in the usage of different renewable energy sources, but the overall consumption of sustainable power is on the rise throughout the 6 decades. Okay, so that's your Band 9 introduction. After that, as all of you know, we're going to do the analysis, right? So we analyze the line graph in more detail. And what do we do when we're analyzing the line graph? What do we need to do? So I'm going to just stick this below the graph now for logistic purposes. So what do I do as I'm analyzing the line graph? And this is essential for saving time, writing clearly, quickly, accurately, with great coherence. What do I do, members? So of course I'm going to analyze, right? And what's included in this step for analysis? Yeah, Roshni. Okay, full sentences, Roshni. So Roshni says some clear points, right? And what Roshni is saying is that we should indicate about 6 to 8 clear points to write in the analysis. Okay. So you want to indicate, let's say 5 to 8 clear points. Each becomes a sentence or 2. Okay, usually they're 1 sentence for each point. Perhaps you might need a little bit more for 1 or 2 points. Depends on your writing style and what you're writing. Okay, now, as I said in this class, we are focusing on interpretation. So interpreting the line graph in such a way that it's clear for you, it's clear for your reader, it's coherent, and you get a nice high band score. Okay, so notice that with these line graphs, you have a lot of jitter, okay? That means that you have a lot of data points. So you see all of these kinds of ups and downs and ups and downs, and there's a valley here, and then you get a peak, and then you get another valley and another little peak and a valley. Now, of course, in the exam, in the IELTS exam, you have 20 minutes, and you're writing about 200 words, let's say, if you're going for that band 7, or you're trying to get a little bit more, you're going for 200 words in that 20 minutes. That's not a lot. It might seem like it's a lot, but it's actually not a lot. Okay, you definitely don't have time to describe all of these peaks and valleys. That just won't work for you. Okay, so when you have a line graph with this much variance, okay, the first step that I would recommend taking is drawing the mean. Okay, the mean is the average line at any given point in the time frame. So here, all you're doing is going through kind of the middle of this, okay? So we end up with this type of a line, all right? That gives me a much clearer perspective on what's actually happening with the total consumption of renewable energy. And then, of course, I do the same here. Now, that doesn't mean that I completely forget about the peaks and the valleys. Okay, these are called peaks. It's called a valley. There are different ways to say those, of course, spikes or dips. Okay, that's another way to say it. So I don't completely forget about those, but I do focus more on the actual overall trend within each line, okay? It would be somewhat crazy to try and describe all of these peaks and valleys, and it wouldn't make a lot of sense, okay? Yeah, Roshni, you can definitely say that it's overall increasing, and we've just done that, right, Roshni? So we actually said that in the last sentence of the overview, that the total trend is showing an increase, right? Okay. All right. So what would be my point number 1? Let's see how each of you interprets this line graph, and let's see if we can get some agreement on the importance of point 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Okay. So what would you consider to be point number 1 here? How would you start your essay? Where would you start it from? Okay. Awaz says start with wind. I don't think I would do that, Awaz. Okay, remember, you need to have good flow in your essay. So Roshni says start with total consumption. Okay. I tend to agree with Roshni. Awaz, when you have your introduction describing a main feature, like the overall consumption of sustainable power is on the rise throughout the 6 decades, I would probably start with that. That's the most significant, and then we can get into all of the other details. So Joya says, let's start by writing the points between 1949 and 1979. Okay. I would even go all the way to the end. So my mean line is a little bit awkward. I would probably go all the way to here. Okay. You could, Joya, maybe go somewhere around here and claim that and then say it slows a little bit. But again, that's a lot of information. So I would probably just describe this full line here, okay, as my point number 1. So starting at roughly 3 quadrillion BTUs and then increasing all the way to 7, okay? And I would say that it's quite a steady, okay, it's not a sharp, but it's definitely a steady increase of renewable energy consumption globally, a rise from 3 to 7, so more than doubling in these 6 decades. Okay, I'm giving you a lot of information there. Now, if I'm really pushing for that band 9 level description, then I might include a little bit more here. So this would be my point number 1. And this dip here, there's a very sharp dip here. I would actually put that into that point 1, and I would call that point 1B. Okay, that's quite a distinct dip right at around the year 2000. Okay, so that would be my first point, is this overall increase in the total from 3 to 7 quadrillion BTUs. And then what would be my number 2? So that would be my number 1. What would be my number 2? So what would you describe as your number 2? Okay, so we have the total, and here we have the hydroelectric, then here we have wood, biofuel, and then wind. So what would you describe as your second point? Okay, Roshni says do biofuel and wind. I'm not sure, Roshni, why you're so adamant about biofuels and wind. They're the lowest amounts, even though they're on a rapid increase, especially after the year 2000. They're still very, very minimal compared to these other sources. Here, Roshni, I would probably go with hydroelectric and wood. I mean, relatively speaking, they're used 10 times as much as wind and biofuel. So I would just hold off on the wind and biofuel. I would probably do the hydroelectric as my third point, or my second point. Okay, erase these confusing numbers here. All right, so this would be my second point here, the use of hydroelectric power, and then I would describe this trend until here, and then the trend from here to here. So that would be my second point, okay, going from here. We could call this a third point, okay? So second point is here to here, and then the third point here to here. And then my fourth point would be wood, okay? And then my fifth, sixth points would be biofuel and wind. So let's do this, okay? Without going into too much more analytic detail at this point, let's start to describe these. So let's start with our point number 1. Okay, I'm gonna just clean this up a bit so you can make more sense of it. Okay, so this is our point number 1. It's describing the total. Starts in 1949 at 3 quadrillion BTUs, and then increases to 7 quadrillion BTUs by 2011, with this significant dip that occurs in 2000. So go ahead and describe that trend line for me, please, as your first sentence of the analysis. Okay, I'll do the same, and then we'll compare. Okay. So, again, you don't have to write each point as one sentence. You can use two sentences. And most importantly, time yourself, students. So, quality is more important than quantity. It's as long as you can write 160, 70 words, at that point, you want to focus much more on quality than quantity. So you want to focus and make sure your grammar is correct, your vocabulary is correct, your spelling is correct. So if you can't write the sentence, this amount steadily, if you can't write the sentence, also there was a notable dip in overall consumption around the year 2000, then don't write that sentence. Then leave that sentence, okay? This is why it's important to practice at home and time yourself. All right? Okay. Joya says, throughout the entire decade, it can be seen that there is an increase in energy consumption from 3 to 7 quadrillion BTU. However, there is a significant dip in the last decade. Not deep, Joya, dip, okay? And visualized is not accurate. Seen is the word that you're looking for. Otherwise, Joya, really nice composition, okay? So just careful with your word choice. Visualized is seen, and deep is dip, D-I-P. It's a different word, okay? Otherwise, good. Joya, that was good, okay? Yextan says, looking at data in more detail, the total consumption of sustainable energy initiated at about 2 quadrillion BTU, which fluctuated through the given timeline with a dip and a jump to 7 by 2008. Yeah, Yextan, that's not bad. It's a little bit unclear, to be perfectly honest with you. If you're giving me a presentation, I'd be kind of like, okay, I get you, but it's slightly confusing. But not bad, Yextan. It's still, I would say that you're still putting out a band 7, 6.57 level sentence there. So it's not bad. Roshni says, as stated, in 1949, the total consumption of renewable energy was 3 quadrillion BTU. However, this figure gradually increased over the period until 2008 to roughly 7 quadrillion BTU. Roshni, gradually, I think, would be a little bit less of a curve, okay? So students, when you see this kind of almost like a 30-degree, okay, it's more of a steady or a solid increase. It's more than a gradual. A gradual would be a little bit less. It's arguable, but I would say that it's better to use the word steady, Roshni, in this case. All right. Amira says, by looking at the graph in more detail, the overall consumption of renewable sources started at 3 quadrillion BTU in 1949, followed by a significant increase during the next years. And where does it end, Amira? So you have a good start there, Amira, but you want to finish that idea, okay? So finish that point 1, all right? Here is my explanation for that red line. When looking at the graph in more detail, the total consumption of sustainable energy in 1949 was 3 quadrillion BTU, period. Okay, it's not a super complex sentence, but it's clear. This amount steadily increased over the next 60 years, comma, with some variance. So I'm reporting this, this jitter here. Okay, I'm saying it's with some variance. All right, that's all you need to do to report that jitter. Okay, don't report each little point. Okay, so, and I'm using the 2 commas here to make this an additive clause. Okay, so with some variance, and more than doubled to 7 quadrillion BTU by 2008. Also, there was a notable dip in overall consumption around the year 2000. So that's my +1 sentence where I'm really looking for that high band score, and I'm making sure to explain this little dip here, okay, at around 2000. If I wanted to be more accurate, I'd probably say 2002, but close enough, okay, close enough. All right. Now, my next line or my next point for comparison should be hydroelectric power, as it's definitely the most consumed form of renewable energy given by this line graph. Okay, so I can do that, and if I want to be even more informative, I can even compare it with wood. So wood is very, very close to hydroelectric power. It's a little bit less, but it does definitely have a similar amount of consumption, especially when we're comparing these two to biofuels and wind. So I can easily write that as well, okay? That hydroelectric power and wood were consumed at similar amounts, with hydroelectric power gaining more usage, okay? So I can describe it like that as well. Amira says, however, there's a noticeable fall around 2000 before increasing to reach about 7 quadrillion BTUs in 2008. Okay, nice, Amira. So you finished your sentence. Okay, so here's my point 3.4, maybe 0.5 in here. And then here is my 0.6. Okay. And then I have a summary. And just like last time, students, last week, this week again, I'm going to challenge you to write the rest of this essay. So I'm going to leave a little bit more for you this time. I think you know where to go, and I want to see your writing, okay? Of course, I will finish this essay as well at a Band 9 level for you, and I will post it on the YouTube channel's community board on our channel, okay? So you will be able to see it there. So we have a great start. I think you have a good idea of where to go from here, and I'd really like to see what you can do with it without my further input or example. And then, of course, I'll post it, and then you can compare it to what I've done, okay? You can, members, this is for members only, you can send me your ending to this essay to adrian@aehelp.com, and I will gladly give you some feedback on how you did, or at least give you a score estimate, okay? So finish this essay. You have about 2/3 of the analysis remaining and the summary. For all of our viewers, join our premium packages at aehelp.com for academic IELTS and gieltshelp.com for general. On our websites, we do offer editing, writing corrections, and feedback to give you a personal experience and help you understand where you make mistakes and how you can improve your band score. So definitely visit our websites. You can use the writing services in the free version or the premium paid version of the website. Again, the websites look like this. This is the general with the green background. Click that big red button to join the premium package, or the green button to try the demo version. Same idea for the academic. Click that big red button to join the premium package there. So yeah, in 30 minutes, we will have task 2 on a related topic. So Awaz, sounds good. I'll see you in 30 minutes. So far, so good, students, members. You've done an excellent job so far. So I look forward to seeing how you finish these essays, okay? And once again, see you in 30 minutes for some task 2 writing. Bye for now, everyone.